the song. All right.
Calm down. We're back.
Okay, I do kind of regret giving Mike the phone number now, because if he does call in while we are on the air, you know what happens.
The loud ringing noise?
Mm-hmm. Then we blow out our eardrums, yeah. So we got that to look forward to.
Well, okay. Headphones off. Anyways.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so
we're going to throw our number out there to our listeners.
Right.
Thanks for listening, guys. The number is 1-616-331-2875.
Oh, there we go.
Well, that was fast.
Yep. Yeah, you go ahead and answer it.
Hello, Whale Radio, Philosophy Talks. Hello.
Oh, you have to turn him on.
This is Caleb of Philosophy Talks.
Oh, how's it going, guys?
We're pretty good.
What's going on?
Oh, there's weird lag between this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a lag. You should know that
Yeah.
you have a show too.
So how's it going, guys? I'm a big fan. Been listening to you for 3 years. Love you ever since you guys started.
Oh, nice, excellent.
Before you became popular, so I'm kind of like the hipster of your group.
Oh, that's cool.
You liked us before we were cool.
Yeah.
Presupposing that we are now cool.
Presupposing, you said presupposing.
I know, presupposing presupposition.
Anyways, you can't talk to the mic, so there's black.
Right. Ask him if he wants to talk about death.
So, do you want to talk about death, Michael?
Oh, yes, I would love to.
All right. Well, cool. What's your opinion on death?
It's the same right before you woke up for the first time.
You mean born? He can't hear me. You have to.
How do you mean, Michael?
Okay. Well, tell me, what do you remember what it was like before you first woke up or came to the earth?
You mean before you were born?
Well, no. We do not.
Well, that's exactly what death is going to be like.
So it's nothingness.
Yeah.
Oh, that's probably pretty reasonable. Rather reasonable.
So just all of, your entire consciousness just goes back to not existing. Okay, wait.
Okay. Oh, there we go. So, Mike, then from your take, when you die, you basically just go back to not existing. Before you were born, you didn't exist. Now you exist, and then when you die, you just stop existing.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah. So what happens to your consciousness? I mean, your body doesn't cease to exist, but your consciousness does.
What happens to my body?
Well, I'm saying, when you die, your body still exists. Physically, you still exist.
Okay, so it still exists. I mean, it exists, but it's going to be either buried or cremated.
Or dumped in a river.
Yeah, it's kind of just like a waste of space.
Yeah. So then what happens to your consciousness?
I mean, I already told you, it's nothing.
Huh. It's almost as if it didn't exist at all.
I don't know about... Hey, yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
Alright, cool. Thanks for calling in, man.
Oh, we're not going to talk anymore?
What, do you have more to add?
I was just wanting to talk about what you're doing tonight.
We're going to Sam's tonight.
Oh.
I'll see you there.
Hey, wait, what are you doing tonight at 9 o'clock?
I'll talk to you later, Mike.
Last leg you're standing at 9 o'clock in Kirchhoff.
I work. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thanks, Mike, for calling in.
Oh, Mike.
Anyways.
Magic Mike, everybody.
Magic Mike. Great guy. Anyways, so let's get this ball rolling. So, obviously, when it comes to talking about death, we've got two pretty main branching ideas for what death is. You've got what Mike suggested. So when you die, it's just like nothing. It's not even like you're aware of nothing. It's not like it's just black and you're just like, oh, this kind of sucks. I don't really have anything to do. It's like you're not even present for that. So we can't really comprehend what it's like because we've never. You can't imagine what it's like to not think because you're always thinking. So it's so different, entirely from our mode of consciousness that it's inconceivable.
If you were to imagine what it's like to not... Oh, wait a minute. Mike's on. If you were to imagine what it's like to not think, then that would, be a logical contradiction, technically.
I feel like if we were to come up with some sort of idea of what it's like, if we were to like sort of envision what it would be like to die, it would be similar to like if you were to black out or like go into a coma, like something like that, because in those instances, like your consciousness like sort of stops, like you're no longer thinking. It's just
He means talk louder.
I know, but okay. Should I repeat all of that?
No, you're good. Just
Okay.
keep going.
I don't know. I have anything else to say.
Okay.
So yeah, we have that. On the flip side, which I don't think we need to discuss too much because I'm not gonna lie, there's of course the religious answer, depending on which religion a person subscribes to. So when you die, you go to heaven, or you're reincarnated, or you go to, I don't know, the
Yeah.
plains of Escadel or whatever.
Either way, the central idea is that, like, what you call you at its most
Fundamental
at its
level.
most fundamental level is your soul, and your soul is something that is eternal. You know, like it outlives your body. It existed before you were born, technically, and it continues to live on after you were die. And that's a general concept that, you know, is the case with most major religions in the world,
Indeed.
whether it be Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, whatever.
Indeed. So we have these two suggestions.
Oh,
Looks like we have another caller.
that we do.
Just a moment, guys. Hello, Whale Radio. This is Philosophy Talks.
Hi, it's Maria.
Hi, Maria. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Just lovely, thanks.
All right. So I was wondering how you guys define consciousness, because officially when you die, you want to know what happens to you, your personality. So would you like define your soul and your mind as different things, or what happens?
Oh, indeed. Good point. So there's a couple different ways we can look at this. Firstly, when we're talking about consciousness, if we're going to speak from the perspective of a religious person, we of course say yes, your consciousness is your soul interacting with your body. It's some eternal part of you that once you die will continue on in some way.
Well, I would actually disagree with that. I would say that the popular answer would be that the mind is consciousness is the mind's manifestation of the soul. You know, the soul is something that's unconscious, I guess you could say.
You can't talk to Mike on the phone.
I know I'm talking to you.
Was that Bill talking?
Yeah.
Because I couldn't hear anything.
1 second.
I would disagree with what Caleb said, and instead say that consciousness is rather the mind's manifestation of the soul, being that the soul would be your, I guess you could say, unconscious identity. Like the soul doesn't think. The mind thinks and, expresses itself through consciousness, but I guess the source of that consciousness would be your soul.
So then why would it matter if our soul survives if it's not who we are?
Well, I mean, think about it like this. If you think from like the Christian perspective, your soul is eternal. It lives on after you die. But consciousness may or may not necessarily.
Okay.
All
So,
right, Caleb disagrees, so I'm gonna hand it back off to him.
all right.
Sorry, Bill. I gotta smash you down.
All right, let's hear it.
In terms of religious thought, that's not going to work. Because if you say the soul is like who you are, but your consciousness is your mind, then when you are
I didn't say is your mind. I said like your mind is what expresses the soul
again,
through consciousness.
that would be problematic for the reason that if your mind is the thing that is, what was the word that you used?
Manifestation. Yeah.
Of the soul, then the problem would be that it's not, and your soul isn't directly in control of what you're doing. So you, which is your soul, is not in control. It's your mind. And so again, you, the soul, are not making decisions. But in either case, that's not a religious theory is that you have the soul. And secondly, for the non-religious, consciousness, it's a pretty tricky term, Maria, but you can say that one functional, pretty vague definition is that consciousness is a product of the workings of your mind. You're speaking in a physical sense.
Okay, so you would want your consciousness to survive. So in this case, we're defining consciousness like who we are, and our soul is the same thing?
For the religious person, the soul potentially be the same thing, depending on which way you look at it.
So consciousness would then be a metaphysical thing, like an abstract thing. Okay. And are you saying that the mind is a physical thing then, like linked with the body, or a separate thing from the body?
Is that talking to me? Because I can't hear you.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking.
Sorry,
I'm talking to Caleb now, actually.
We need to work out a system lag. Maybe we can bring a splitter in for these phones.
It's difficult because we only have one phone, and
Yeah, well,
you can't hear me right now. I know.
You're talking to air. In fact, they will hear us in 30 seconds.
Yeah, I got that. I got that.
And then I'll be talking, and you'll just chirp in and talk.
Okay.
And it'll be no longer relevant because we'll have moved on. So that's what happened in the studio. Sorry, Maria.
Yeah.
You're totally fine.
So again, one more time. What was your rephrased question?
Just I guess defining the soul and the mind as like two different things. Essentially, if you believe that there's an afterlife, you want you to survive. Like, why would it matter if your soul survives if that's like not your personality, not who you are, not your memories, experiences?
Well,
That's a very good point.
That would be Bill's claim, and I will disagree with that. I would say your soul is your mind. They're like one and the same.
No. That is not what I was saying. Actually, I was saying that the mind is an expression of the soul. I'm talking to you, not to Maria.
Was your mic on?
Yes.
Well, then you're talking to the mic. All
Yeah.
right. So Bill is saying that. What were you saying, Bill?
I was saying.
I was not in fact saying that the mind and the soul were one and the same thing or interconnected, but rather that the mind is an expression of the soul.
All right, cool. Have a good day, guys.
Yeah. Thanks, Maria.
Bye.
Bye, Maria. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, you pretty much said what I was going to say there, that like if you are not a religious person, maybe not strictly an atheist, but if you just say you're non-religious, many non-religious people still consider themselves spiritual in some sense, that they may not ascribe to any kind of institutionalized religion, or they may not think of the Judeo-Christian God, but they still believe in something, I guess, or they still may believe that there is something immaterial that, makes up who we are. Like a soul in the most abstract sense.
Yeah, I would say that like a vast majority of like basically all people, not just like irreligious people, but irreligious people as well, like they're not automatically like by default like strict materialists. Like
Right.
they don't just automatically assume like it's all just neural firings
And we're just walking bags of flesh.
bunch of
that are
we're
just
like
trying to.
organic robots.
Yeah.
Like most people still believe that there is some sort of transcendent immaterial consciousness that is most people subscribe to the belief that it's like just a byproduct of our mind. So they want to sort of like dip into both materialism and spiritualism, but I don't know. Most people aren't strict, like rigid materialists and think that it's just 100% biological.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I would argue that kind of along those lines, that what most people are referring to when they are talking about their soul is in fact their mind. Maybe, in fact their unconscious mind. But I would make that claim.
Yeah.
That there is no disconnect between the two. They are one and the same.
But I would say that for sake of discussion here, since one of the definitions of death is going to be death of consciousness, death of yourself, of your identity, of your personality.
Right.
And thus, I feel like to begin this discussion, we do need to establish some sort of objective, for all intents and purposes, objective definition of what consciousness is, so that we can discuss perhaps death being death of consciousness.
Right.
So
if we are talking about,
how can we define this then?
right.
Well, I don't know, because here's the problem: is that we're going to be looking to do this for a couple of different theories of what death is. Mm-hmm. So we can definitely define what consciousness is for one of those particular theories. But as per consciousness for the spiritualist, the irreligious spiritualist, their definition of consciousness is going to be significantly different than, and probably more along the lines of someone who's religious, than the straight up physicalist, which is potentially what we will be dealing with towards the end. So that is problematic and something we'll have to keep in mind. But yeah, we can define it somewhat, like for the sake of argument, per each example.
Okay, so then we can start with saying that when you die, your soul lives on, but your consciousness dies.
Well, let's start with the spiritualist.
Okay.
So just basic
Which I think would kind of be in that sense, that there's something that lives on, but not strictly your consciousness. Like after you die, you're no longer necessarily aware of yourself, but there is something.
Yes. So let's take a peek. And what does that mean to say then?
Right.
So there's this criticism of the religious, and people who believe in an afterlife, that their philosophy in that regard cheapens life. And now some of you who may be religious are listening and thinking, well, what do you mean by that? How would you be cheapening life by having this belief that gives purpose to your life? Well, the claim can be made, okay, so you believe in an afterlife. So what is the purpose of this life? Well, it's doing something or believing something that allows you to get entrance into the afterlife. And I mean, of course, it's more than that. And there's a lot more subtle nuances. But one particularly major facet is that this life is a transitional stage for you as a soul or some kind of being into the next life.
Okay.
And so that being the case, what is the value of this life then? So why should you care about this life if your goal is the next?
Right. Like essentially, why would anything that you do here truly matter if it did not bring you close to the goal of, bettering yourself in the next life? Say like reaching heaven or something.
It's like working at McDonald's the summer before you first go to college. Mm-hmm. It's like I don't give a crap about, flipping these burgers. I'm just making some cash. But because I'll be going to college and I'll be learning things and I'll get a good job and I'll be successful. And so it's this transitional stage, and you don't give too many. Well, I can't say that word on the radio, but you don't care too much.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I think that notion that our life is just simply like a means to some other end, like attaining like just a sort of like beautiful afterlife, like
you can call
going
it
to heaven, getting all your
you
wishes
call it
granted.
salvation,
getting
nirvana,
salvation,
what have you.
That sort of notion is just, I think, incredibly poisonous, because if you are wrong in that sort of belief, you must realize that, like, rather than like thinking of your life as this like continuous end in itself, which that is what I believe it is this just sort of continuum of like just transitional stages, and if you don't like respect it and adore it for like how valuable it truly is, and you just think it's just this like transitional means, like just working that job so you can like save up some money and then like buy your new TV or just like get your salvation, then you're not really enjoying it for what it truly is, and you're not giving it the value that it deserves. So,
well, let's.
That was deep.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
Sorry.
But no, I'm kind of in agreement with you there, because if we suppose that there is a different life that we are going to lead to after our physical death, then that kind of diminishes the value of our current life.
Well, then it's up to me.
And that everything we do is just a means to that end. And then even once you reach, once you reach that next life, what then?
Well, then
I mean,
it's up
like,
to me.
Can we really define that as? Can we even define that as a life? Can we ascribe that term to it?
I don't. When you apply like the term like eternal,
Like,
when you say that like something like the duration is like infinity, or like you live eternally, like I do not see like value in that, because just like when you do an activity, like something that gives it significant value is that it is finite, the duration is finite, and you only have this specific amount of time to cherish it and just adore it and experience it. And when it's like eternal, when you just consider yourself like oh, it doesn't matter, I'm just gonna live forever, like this is just one tiny speck of my duration, since I'm gonna live forever, it's just like, what is the point? I feel like all value is lost
Right.
in that sort of notion.
If I had an infinite amount of time, yeah, I wouldn't place a whole lot of value on my time. I would probably spend about 1,000 years messing around in Minecraft, and then maybe like 10 years trying to read War and Peace. You know, because I mean, like, well, what's the matter? I got literally all the time in the world and out of the world.
Okay. Well, let's save face for a lot of these religions because there is like some like legitimacy to. I mean, there is some legitimacy to that criticism, but it is not entirely valid. I would argue.
Okay.
So let's look at it like this. So I am a religious person, and I have this acknowledgement of this eternal afterlife. And so I mean, one can say, well, there is no value on the current life, or there's decreased value on my current existence, assuming that there is only one. And again, when you're making that criticism, you're devaluing your life by believing in the infinity. You are presupposing that there is no infinity. So that's
Wait, I'm sorry. Say that again. You're presupposing that there is no infinity?
Let's say, yeah. So let's say I see this religious young man, and he says, "I'm gonna live forever," and I make this criticism that, well, you are devaluing your present life by believing in this notion. The only way that criticism is valid is if there is no afterlife.
No, it's valid, but the only way it's like sound, the only way it's like a true criticism is if we are right and if we really do only live once. YOLO, exactly. But basically, like, what I'm saying is like to adopt that notion and to like live by that with like a really, really high chance that you're wrong. Like, it seems like not pragmatic to waste your life because of there being such a high like probability of you being wrong.
I must disagree, for two reasons, beyond my first claim. Firstly, let's look at the way that, well, I mean, this is a two in one thing. Let's look at the way that a person who believes in an afterlife, not just necessarily a religious person, but let's say someone who's spiritual. And so they have this belief in a cosmic soup, if you will, of, like existence. And when you die, you return to the soup to coalesce into something else, whether it be a tree or a rock or a cow. Moo.
Okay. Moo.
Anyways, so the way I'm living my life is I'm attempting to reach some kind of balance with this universe. And what does that entail? Well, that entails, to an extent, some kind of like recognition of moral action. It entails attempting to like find purpose or follow purpose in life. And it furthermore entails a acceptance of death, which is, again, the topic of our discussion. So this is a valid way to deal with the fact that in this world we will all cease to exist. We will become eventually every single one of our molecules and atoms will be scattered onto the wind, and there will be no connection, like molecularly whatsoever, anymore of us.
So you are arguing that, say, like from a pragmatist perspective,
Pascal's wager is what I'm arguing.
well, yeah, I actually have a different motion or a different idea in my mind. Well, I'm thinking like Pascal's wager, but kind of like we can get back to Pascal's original wager in a moment. But I'm thinking like a different idea of that. Like taking Tyler's idea, and we'll say, assume that you believe in an afterlife, and because of that, you put less value on your current life with the expectation that you will, after you die, you will live forever in some sense. So, assuming that you are right, then you're right. Like the current life that you are living, it really wasn't that valuable because you have an infinite amount of time to live a second life. Assuming that you're wrong, you do not get to live a second life, and you were not fully able to live your current life. Now, on the other hand, if you are somebody who does not believe in an afterlife, you are going to live this life to the fullest, and that if you do not believe in an afterlife, that does not necessarily disqualify you from moving on to an afterlife after you die.
No.
Not necessarily. That's like from different religious doctrines.
I'm going to stop you right there. And I'm sorry, Bill, I'm going to have to call you out.
Okay.
For this, you are jumping quite far in logic. Because
Am I?
you are, yes,
Okay.
you are making this claim implicitly that the spiritual person, if they are living their life,
Right.
and with the expectation of the afterlife,
You are right.
that they are not living it to the same fulfillment that the person who is only like living this life singularly.
Can I clarify?
Well, you are right. I am guilty of making that assumption, and I was aware that I was making that assumption.
Let's not get too
but
far
in the same
off
way
track.
that Pascal's wager makes similar assumptions, similar,
Well, let's not get too off track. Because again, the point of the show is
Right.
dealing with death specifically,
right.
not whether or not religious people are like dealing with death properly.
Okay, fair enough.
So, but that said,
But I was trying to make the connection to, Pascal's initial wager. You know what I mean?
Pascal's initial wager is totally flip-flopped, and it does a
Right.
significantly better job of arguing for the positive.
It's used for the opposite, but it can be used for what we're saying, I think.
Yeah, because
I'd have to disagree.
Because Pascal's
disagree
wager
entirely.
also does rely on many assumptions.
For those of who are not familiar with Pascal's wager,
But yeah,
and it's
well,
possible.
Yeah,
Let's
we should sum it up.
grab
first.
a piece of paper if you have one on hand, or make a little mental flow chart. Well, not flow chart, but so make a 4x4 square on your paper in your head. So it's basically like a big T on your paper. All right, and let's label. This is like a little probability simulator. If you were taking like statistics, something like that. Pascal was a statistician. So on the top left side, let's put the afterlife exists, and then next to that, the afterlife does not.
Wait, are you actually doing Pascal's wager, or are you doing? That's not Pascal's wager, and it's God's existence, not afterlife.
This is functional for the purpose of this.
Okay, so you are using our example here?
Yes.
Okay.
And then let's say on the other side, so that's the x-axis,
Okay.
and then on the y-axis for the top of that, we'll say, I have a belief in the afterlife, and then below that, I do not have a belief in the afterlife. And so let's just plug this out. So I believe in the afterlife, and the afterlife exists. It's pretty cool. I believe in the afterlife.
No,
and the
wait.
afterlife
You
does not exist.
You have to.
I have lived a life that is not fearful of death. I have found purpose and meaning in my
That's
life.
still presupposing just as much as we were.
Yeah.
That it was,
I really would.
say that on the mic.
yeah, like I mean, the thing is, what we should clarify is that having this sort of belief that there is an afterlife and living your life by that does not entail that you're going to live a wasted, horrible life, but it also does not entail that you're going to live a fulfilled, like purposeful, like enlightened life. It really depends. I think it depends on so many other factors, but I think we just shouldn't make any assumptions about like the quality of their life just based on like them subscribing to that belief.
Right.
You know?
Like I absolutely agree with Tyler too. You can make the assumptions either way. That if you believe in an afterlife, then you therefore find purpose in your life and live a better life because of that. Or you could make the claim that if you believe in afterlife, then you value your current life less and therefore do not live life to the fullest.
No.
You can make the claim either way without any objective facts to support yourself.
I disagree.
It's fallacious either way.
The person who believes in spirituality absolutely has a purpose to their life. Whether or not it's correct is a question.
And the person who does not believe in an afterlife does not.
It does not intrinsically, like.
See, I disagree with you again there.
Oh well, even if whether or do they not.
Well,
That's not the purpose of this conversation.
Okay, well, I'm gonna make this argument then. You're saying that a person who believes in afterlife, they intrinsically have have purpose to their life, or at least they have that feeling.
As a subset of their belief, yes, because they have this
I can make the
idea
argument of the exact
of what
opposite.
goes. How so?
Okay, well, if somebody believes in an afterlife, how does that necessarily give purpose to their life?
Because their life, then, like we said, this life, then, in some way, is in regards to the afterlife. Whether it is
a
my
means
attempting to
It's
find.
almost like an extrinsic purpose. It's not intrinsic at all. It's like I'm doing this so that I can get some sort of like it seems like it's not intrinsic at all to like have that particular type of purpose, because you're living your life behaving in certain ways so that you can get like some sort of like, maybe not like physically tangible, but some sort of like experiential, like something that you can actually like deal with, like some sort of reward in the end, and or otherwise avoid a punishment, which is another like complete other side of like the motivation for believing in an afterlife, is to avoid what
Well,
avoid eternal damnation. But I would just say that like having a purpose like that doesn't require your life being a means to an end is more intrinsic. If you're living like for your own like happiness and like bettering the collective happiness of others, like I feel like that's more intrinsic than. And if you do that while believing in an afterlife, there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I'm saying. We can't make any sort of suppositions about the quality of their life.
right. Yeah,
It's hard.
I'm absolutely in agreement there too. Like if we say
got
that
five
if you say that if you believe in afterlife, then this current life is intrinsically just a means to that end. Like this life is a means to the next life. It's only temporary. So what happens during this life ultimately has no purpose. What say you? Okay, we're going on break.
We'll be right back, guys.
Nothing exists.
And we are back.
Nothing exists.
You can't have metaphysical nihilism. That doesn't make any sense.
Wait, what?
That's the notion that nothing exists is metaphysical nihilism.
would
Ontological
be
Ontological
ontological. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not metaphysical.
Ontology is a subset of metaphysics.
Yes, which deals with things in the world as opposed to the nature
Right.
of the world.
Can you be? Well, no, wait. A metaphysical nihilist would mean like there's no meaning to the nature of things. There's no meaning to the physics of physics.
No, that would be an existential nihilist.
No, I think that would be a physicalist.
No, because meaning is
No, if you were a
particularly-
metaphysical nihilist, that would make you a physicalist, wouldn't it?
No, that's metaphysical and physical are totally different things.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Like if we're saying like nihilist, we're
Ontology
saying that like there is no meta to it, I guess. Like just what is.
No, you can still have metaphysics without any physical thing.
Properties and like the nature of things.
Yeah, it's saying that there isn't-
particularly the nature of things.
Yes, but
Ontology is what exists.
right, but I'm saying that if you were a metaphysical nihilist and you're saying that there is no nature to things, like if we equate nature with meaning.
No, then you'd be an ontological nihilist. Nothing exists, but there still can be a nature of the universe. In fact, there would be. If nothing exists, the nature of the universe would be, that nothing exists.
The nature of the universe would be non-existence.
Yes.
This universe. What about the next universe? Getting back on topic now.
Well, this is the best of all possible universes, of course.
Of course.
Of course.
Of course.
You guys missed the Spinoza talk.
Let's Spinoza talk.
There was a Spinoza colloquium.
Philosophy.
Hey, are
Yeah.
you guys going to colloquiums? Because if you're not, you should. They're super cool.
I didn't go to the one yesterday. I haven't been to the one.
And
I haven't been in 2
shameless
weeks.
plug for Philosophy Club that is run by my good friend Malachi Sullivan. It's quite enjoyable. They watch movies sometimes. They watched Drive a while ago. We haven't seen Drive. Oh,
Yeah, we did watch Drive.
Ryan Gosling is so hot. He's dreamy.
Yeah.
It's true.
Okay. Well, actually, like, what do you say we talk briefly about like some of the things that the philosophy department does have brewing as of lately? I mean, it seems like there's like a lot of brainstorming of, like upcoming projects.
CFP, yo, there is a call for papers. So those of you who are philosophers, or maybe you're not philosophers, but you've written a paper that deals with philosophy, and you're interested, perhaps, in presenting that paper in front of a bunch of people and being super cool like that, you can. The philosophy department is, in conjunction with Calvin, they are hosting the first ever what do they call those things? It's not a presentation. It's a
A
conference.
conference, yeah.
It's a philosophy conference where a bunch of philosophers and non-philosophers who've done philosophy show up and they present their papers, and then the papers get ripped to shreds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why.
And there's the keynote speaker is Gary Gutting.
Oh, that's right. And the keynote speaker will be Gary Gutting, and the topic is on atheism and things along those lines.
Yeah, what was it specifically again? I cannot remember.
I don't remember the exact title.
What was the topic? It was
It was with regards to religion and atheism and agnosticism and things along those lines.
right.
And I don't think it was. It might. Yeah. I
It
think
might
it
have
was
just been just Christianity, atheism, and agnosticism.
Yeah.
Just
Might
and just like an open.
expository, like just like explaining.
Well,
things.
yeah, Mike, bro.
I have no idea, so I'm not gonna.
Okay, well, look it up and get back to us on it.
Right now.
Yeah, are you guys planning on submitting papers for that?
I don't have any to submit.
Yeah, I don't have any submit.
I don't have any halfway decent ones that submit.
Oh yeah, submit.
I did have that one on environmental ethics for my There's a Human Nature class last year, but which I did want to submit to something, but I spent like 2 months working on that paper and it did not turn out the way I wanted to. I kind of want to just revamp the entire thing and maybe, either use it for another class or try to submit it. What?
What's your paper on?
What was it specifically? Oh, do we have a moral responsibility towards the environment in regards to social contract theory?
Do we?
Why, yes, we do actually. You can read.
yeah.
You can read all about it.
Well, according to that. But let's move on back on
Okay.
topic.
All right. Back on topic.
So, now what have we decided? Well, people who are religious have this belief in spirituality, and to some extent, that is sufficient for giving purpose to their life. Again, by sufficient, I mean it's not like necessary to find purpose in life. There are some people who would claim that yes, it is necessary for purpose in life to have a positive metaphysical belief. But on the other hand, there are many who say that it's not. So for the purpose of just conversation, let's just assume that it's not and see if we can't find anything else that is. At least with regards to death. So let's begin to look then and turn our glance towards what is death to the person who is not religious.
Okay. Well, I think we can kind of sum that up with what Mike said when he called in. That essentially it would be going back to the same thing that you were before you were born. Obviously you have no memory of before you were born. And really you have no memory of the first few years of your life. But just imagine what that was like. You did not exist as a person. No thoughts, no nothing. So it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It was just nothing. And from that perspective, death would just be kind of a return to that state of nothing. That everything that you currently call you, your thoughts, your emotions, your ambitions, your dreams, everything just kind of stops. Now, your actual physical body is still around, at least for a time being, until it breaks down.
It's funny that Mike mentioned that, because there's a quote actually by Epicurus, that a philosopher, early Greek philosopher, who summed up pretty precisely what Mike has to say, except with attached to what death is to us, in terms of like not what death is in terms of like what happens when you die, but not even more than what it's like.
How we could
speaking.
conceive of what it's like. Because we could, if he would having a debate on like what it really is to die, like that's different. At least if we're presuming that spirituality is not true, so we're talking like naturally speaking, defining death is different than like providing a sort of like conception for you to like understand like what it would be like to die, like that process of dying.
Yeah. I mean, if we were to define death as just, well, you know that thing that you know that one thing that you've been doing your entire life? Yeah, living. Yeah, you just stop doing that, actually.
Well, no, he doesn't give phenomenological, because that's what it would be. So
Right.
what is it
Yeah.
to experience death?
Everything that makes you alive just kind of quits being
We'll
alive.
touch on that, though. We'll touch on that.
Right.
Because there's other philosophers who talk about experiencing death.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah,
But, Epicurus
okay.
talks about what is death to us in terms of not phenomenologically speaking, not definitionally, but what does death mean to us? What is the value of death to us? And that's what we're going to really be looking at.
Right.
So Epicurus says, in this neato little quote I've got right over here, Epicurus writes, "That which is the most awful of evils, death, is nothing to us, since when we exist, there is no death, and when there is death, we do not exist. So before I am born, I did not experience what it was like before I was born. So death means nothing to me because I cannot be bothered by death because I don't exist to be bothered."
Yeah. I mean, you can't be pissed off after you're dead.
Yeah.
You'd be like, man, I hate death. I hate being dead. It sucks.
Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, you can't hate. You're dead.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that brings up a good point. Why do we fear death? You know, why are we afraid to die? And I'll take that a step further. Why do we mourn over the dead?
Well.
Well, Caleb?
Well.
Tyler? Huh?
I think that can be explained like evolutionarily. I mean, it's sort of just in our genetics to like want to perpetuate ourselves, to like maintain our integrity.
Mhm.
And I mean, every single living organism, like from prokaryotic like to amoebas to grasshoppers,
they
to
want to
humans,
be alive.
they want to perpetuate. They want to live.
Mhm.
I mean, and the avoidance of death. Like, I mean, most animals will like sort of they have this fight or flight like mechanism to tackle,
preserve life,
like,
yeah.
to preserve their life, and we just happen to be like so much more complex in our reasoning. So therefore, we can like think about death even when it's not like imminent, like when it's not like right there.
Mhm.
We can still like have this fear because we can conceive of it coming sometime
Right.
within our life. So we have this
we can
fear.
conceive of the inevitability
Yeah.
of death. That
Most animals can't.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Some do probably, but most aren't.
to
like,
to a
"Oh,
degree, to a
I could
degree.
die in 10 years, like that sucks.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most animals, I would say, aren't like thinking like, oh yeah, like I'm a dog, so I'm gonna live for like 8 more like years.
They got 8 more
Like,
long years
So
left.
this sucks. I'm really afraid to die. Like
Yeah.
they don't have that sort of like higher level reasoning, whereas humans do. So we can like cause anxiety for ourselves, like unnecessarily. Really, I mean,
Mhm.
it's not even like for our benefit.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
But I mean, also like having that anxiety of death motivates us to use our time now to prolong
Yeah.
it as much as humanly possible. Like if we did not ever think about death, we wouldn't really bother to create vaccines
Well,
or further.
Let's
medicine.
not jump ahead.
Okay,
we'll
that,
be getting
that,
to that
that
pretty
is
soon.
that is a jump ahead.
affect the way you live.
It definitely does. Yes, being aware of the inevitability of death. Definitely. I mean, like whether you're afraid of death or not, just knowing that you are going to die definitely does change the way you live.
Well, yes, it will, and we'll get to that.
Okay.
Because there's a couple of theories that branch off of there, but we still have a couple things to cover before we get to how do we experience life in
Mhm.
terms of death.
And I want to talk about suicide.
Heidegger,
Suicide.
no.
I wanted to say something about.
Yeah,
Not yet.
but I was
Not yet.
afraid that might be jumping ahead too.
Okay.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay,
One
go
more
on.
thing on what you were saying originally about what Epicurus was saying.
And the mic.
Like Epicurus and what we're sort of discussing right now is that when you exist, you can't experience death, and when you die, when you would be experiencing death, you're not, because you're not existing. So thus, it's meaningless to us. But I find it curious that a lot of people still will, like, upon like hearing of someone's death, will sort of feel bad for that person, like oh, like I feel like, especially in terms of suicide, or like when you know that like their death wasn't necessary, like you feel bad for that person, like that person was murdered, like I feel really bad that that person died, like that sucks.
Yeah.
But
Because-
if we realize that they aren't, like, it means nothing to them,
Mhm.
like Why do we have that empathy? Why do we give a crap? You know?
Yeah. I mean,
Well-
and to kind of further the point, it is kind of interesting that we are kind of guilty. We are kind of guilty of presupposing that life is necessarily a good thing. Therefore, a lack of life, a loss of life, is a bad thing.
Yeah, Mitch Heisman.
Yeah, I love where Mitch Heisman went with that. It's poetically dark, but just absolutely genius.
Calm down.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
We're jumping ahead.
I'm sorry. I like his stuff, man.
We're jumping ahead.
Okay.
Alright.
I mean, yeah, you're like shaking in your seat. You got something to say.
Yeah, because you guys are talking about like, how it is. Why do we fear death?
Yeah.
And you're giving
Like, is
some kind of
death necessarily a bad thing, and is life necessarily a good thing?
calm your.
Okay. Go on.
We've
Say what you need to say.
We've got to discuss. Hey, because we're going to be discussing continental philosophers. We need to give the continentalist answer. No more your empirical shenanigans.
Okay, go on with your Heidegger and whatnot.
Well, yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm going to. Calm down. Yeah. Anyways, so this philosopher Heidegger, he has a couple notions about death, but prior to that, other philosophers sought to answer why is death scary to us, and Tyler, you gave an answer in regards to evolution, and so there's this natural tendency to fear death, and because of our consciousness, we're able to be present of death before it's imminent. So, that said, I think that we can go even deeper than that, and it goes into, at least for Heidegger and Hegel and other philosophers, it goes into this kind of very dark existential area. So let's imagine, why is death scary to us? Well, it's more than just loss of things that you care about in a possessive sense. It is all encompassing. The fact that you are going to die devalues for someone who is not, at least looking at it at face value, like initially, just like a cursory glance, prima facie. When you first look at this, death for the person who does not believe in an afterlife, there is no meaning to life. Because imagine this. So I recognize I am going to die. So what do I do? Well, you can say, well, you try to make your life more meaningful. How?
Some people might take that completely opposite. Why bother? Why bother going to get an education? I'm just gonna die anyway.
Well, yes, you can say that. So you can say, why bother? Doing things I'm going to die.
you
But
really
it goes.
You really got to start talking into the mic, man.
It's hard. I don't have a mic here.
Yeah, I know.
So you can say yes. On the one hand, why do anything? Well, you're jumping ahead because but why not do anything? Well, let's look at this. So let's say you try to do something with your life. All right, you see death coming up. Like, I'm gonna make my life count. So what do? You're nice to people. You meet people. You have a family. You get a good job. You become successful. I don't know. Maybe you become the king of the world.
You save the environment.
You save the universe.
From what?
Aliens. Anything.
Well, then you're saving the aliens too. How do you save the universe, man? It doesn't make sense. There has to be something external to the universe to be a threat to the universe.
Do something. You do a thing. You have an action. What does that matter? Because let's face it, you are going to die, and all the people like your wife or your family is going to die, and your kids are going to die, and then anything that you've done, the monuments that were built to your accomplishments, will crumble into dust and fly away in the winds. And then on top of that, maybe the country that you built, that will at some point degrade. And maybe your entire species will die off, and the planet you lived on will blow apart and become cosmic, clouds. And things will coalesce out of that. And soon, not even the universe will remember your existence, presupposing it was able to know you existed at all. Not that it does, but you can pretend that it does. And so none of that will matter, because not a single atom will bear the mark of your existence. Everything is gone.
Hell, the habitability of the universe itself is temporary. The entire human experiment is temporary. And yeah, eventually we're going to get to a point where there will be nobody around to remember that humans ever existed. Oh, how sad.
Yes, it's like at first glance, it's tragic, but true. You're existing in the universe. You're doing anything in light of death becomes an exercise in futility. Everything that you have done does not matter because it will be undone. It will be unremembered.
I have a headache.
It will not matter.
I got a wicked headache.
Well, it's all this existentialism.
Yeah.
It does that, people.
No, I don't. Yeah, this one doesn't. It spins. Okay, I'm sorry.
So that in mind, a continentalist philosopher, because we like the bang and the fireworks and all that cool language and
Right,
stuff. You can tell. Bust in the wind, bro.
Okay. Well,
Anyways, but that the values everything. You can't even say, well, there's no point to existing, so I might as well just like not do anything. That action, that doesn't even matter in itself. You haven't checked out.
Right.
There's no out.
what's the point in nihilism anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, why would you want to be a nihilist? What's the point in that?
Yeah, exactly.
Mm.
And so,
But I think that, the underlying idea behind that concept is assuming that like if there is no end to be achieved, then the means to any end are meaningless. Like if there's no end to be achieved, then there can't be any means, because like if there is no goal to be achieved, then everything you do is meaningless. It's not working towards something.
pretty much, because you're going to die, everything sucks.
Right.
But it doesn't, because things don't even suck, because that's just stupid.
Because entropy, man.
Yeah. It's all messed up.
I actually read a really interesting story it was actually on Reddit about entropy. And, like the forum was, or it was Ask Reddit, and it was like if you could get the answer to one question, what would it be? And somebody in like the top post was, can entropy be reversed? And it was actually, then it was a link to
Not spontaneously.
well, no, it was actually a link to a different story, which I will post on our Facebook page, and it takes about like 10 minutes to read, but it is actually absolutely brilliant. It is genius. It's very interesting, but I'm not going to talk any more about it because I don't want to spoil it.
Okay. Well, yeah, post it to our wall.
What?
But yeah, post it to our wall.
Oh, to our okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So that said, let's begin to pick this apart a little bit, because now we have everything sucks, and this is usually like the first time our show hasn't ended on everything sucks.
No.
Yeah.
No, there was the one time when we were talking about like 10th dimension stuff, and that was just what? That wasn't everything sucks.
True.
That
Well,
was
we didn't end on existential crisis.
yeah. That was like our our second show too, I think.
Yeah.
I
Also, there
remember
was
that
the one
was
show
fun.
where we had a happy ending. I don't remember what that was. We did have a happy ending once.
What? When?
I don't know.
Usually, I almost always have a migraine after the show.
Really?
I actually have one right now.
Just preemptively take ibuprofen.
Oh, I do.
I don't know why that is.
I don't know.
Buzzing, headphones.
Brain tumor.
Oh, it might be the that'd be the
Yeah,
buzzing.
yeah, I'm gonna breathe here.
Yeah, with the equipment.
Radio waves.
That's possible.
Anyway, okay. In response to this meaninglessness, what do you got for me?
We
What
got-
do I do?
we got a
Like
couple
everything
options.
sucks eventually. Every person I ever know and every person that ever will be is going to not exist, and nobody's ever going to remember that even the Earth existed. Eventually, there's not going to be any sentient being in the universe to be aware of anything that exists.
Well, we got some options
Okay.
in terms of, just for death particularly. I mean, there's a bunch of other philosophers who are acknowledgement of this, and they're like totally cool with it. Mostly the existentialists, and the absurdists. All one of them.
Yeah.
Go Camus. Anyways,
Are there any other absurdists?
and probably people who wrote off Camus.
I need to read more on this.
It's super cool.
Yeah. Have you read the It's always tough to say. The myth of Sisyphus.
It's quite good. Also,
It's definitely worth looking into. What?
Albert Camus.
Camus. I have it. You can borrow it.
Also, The Stranger and The Fall.
I still need to read The Stranger.
Excellent works. Excellent works.
I've read The Plague, which was that was
Plague
just
is
kind of
fantastic.
it was depressing.
Oh, yeah.
Like I kept on thinking like it was gonna get better. It didn't. Just
The first chapter in the Stranger is, of course, it's gonna be depressing. The first chapter of Camus' The Stranger is him, the main character, Marceau, which, by the way, I'm gonna name my cat Marceau this summer. So it's gonna be funny. 'Cause cats,
that's funny.
they don't care about
I'm gonna
things.
name
And,
if I ever
Marceau-
get a cat, I'm gonna name it shorter.
Marceau doesn't care about anything
'Cause
because
I'm original.
he's like this absurdist hero, doesn't give any poops. Because
no poops given.
so it's his mother's funeral, and he's just totally bored and does not care. No. And from there it gets worse. Oh my. But anyways, so let's go back to death. We don't want to end on a bad note and have you all be sad. Two. So let's take a look at a couple different options we've got for us. One, let's look at this Heideggerian viewpoint. Heidegger says, well, you're wrong. You're looking at it wrong. The way that we live our lives is not objective. I will not be there to experience or know that everything I've done will be undone. I can acknowledge that is the case, but it does not matter, because it does not matter to me. I'm here now. I have this subjective life, and looking outside of my life for meaning wouldn't make any sense.
Okay.
And this is very turbo nutshell. Any professor of existentialism would rip me a new one. But this is sufficient for just light banter. So, because I have this subjective life, what's the point of talking about death as a thing that will undo everything? As a subjective person who realizes that death is imminent, I live my life towards death, so death gives my life meaning. Because without death, there's no sense of urgency to the things that I do, like you mentioned. If you were immortal, you would probably just do a lot of nothing. You would play a lot. You would, your life. How can you have a meaningful immortal life? How's that possible? What do you do? What is the end goal? There's no finale. There's no sense of things need to be done quickly, or there's no importance because why? If you don't do something, you can just do it later, eternally later, and you don't have to value anything, because what's there to value? There's no need for basic things like food or drink or air or sleep or things like that, because you just don't die. You just continue to exist. There's no necessity for love, because you are this immortal thing. And what's the purpose of companionship? Because in time, even that will grow stale.
I do have a response to that, but I will let you finish.
Well, that's pretty much it. It's this argument that Heidegger makes that, yes, an immortal being, cannot have any meaning to
An
life.
immortal beating.
Yeah.
Just for all eternity.
I thought it always gets dry over the course of the show.
Yeah, I could add to that, I think. I mean, it's hard to talk about death without talking about life, because it really seems like, on what you were saying, that what is life? How can you define life without having death? Without having death, it seems as if there's no life, because life is just a finite thing. You live for this duration and then you die. But also another question to tag onto that is death necessarily a permanent thing, or could it be temporary? And if it is temporary, is it death? If it's just simply you are being frozen and you're put in cryogenic state and for 1,000 years, but then you're restored. Do you die? Did your life end and now it's restored? Like what is death in that sense?
Well, I mean, like you can define death in one of two ways. You can either define it as being an equal and opposite thing of life, being like an actual state, I guess you could say, or you could just see it as the absence of life. I mean, say for example, we look at the chair. Would you say the chair is dead? I mean, obviously it's not alive, but it's dead.
I think to call it dead isn't necessarily to say that it's an absence of life.
Right.
It's simply to say that it once was alive and now it's ceased to live.
Right.
Because you wouldn't call it death.
So it's
or you
more
wouldn't
like
call a chair dead.
So death
Say
is
it's
like
non-living.
post-life.
Yeah, it's like a necessary it's necessarily like partnered with life. You can't have like either of them independently, I think.
So
That makes sense.
So look at a barrel of oil. Is that dead? I mean, it's essentially like dinosaurs and
But you wouldn't
trees
say
and
that the
crap
oil
that,
is
like,
dead. You would say that whatever animals
Right.
of which they're their fossils.
Yeah. Or like coal, like the
Yeah,
carbon and.
The animals that there was the animals that did die and then their fossils were used
Right.
to create that.
Well, we don't think
You
of it
wouldn't say
as something that was once alive, like in really any sense.
No.
It was made from
Perhaps
things
we
that once were
should.
alive.
If we're being really specific, maybe we could call that a dead thing.
Yeah, my car.
Achieve immortality, and you already achieve immortality at some point, more than physically speaking, but philosophically speaking. Is there any value to loving?
I was changing CDs. I missed most of that.
Okay. Well, if you're I used to move on because we are about
TLDL.
25 minutes.
Give me the TLDL.
TLDR. Too long don't read. Too long don't listen.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, the problem, Heidegger would say, with even loving as an immoral being, as if love is an attempt to achieve immortality, just like for Heidegger, everything we do is an attempt to achieve immortality, to avoid death, then what's the point of doing anything as an immoral being? Because you've already won the game.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no point in loving. There's no point in trying to become immoral, to achieve immortality, to continue to exist, to avoid death, because you already are.
Okay. So in regards to love,
Regards to love, if love is an attempt to achieve immortality, you're already immoral. There's no need, because this is the Heidegger's argument is that if there's an immoral being, there can be no value to his life because there is no death. We are defined for Heidegger by death. We are beings that are, he said, beings
right? But I'm saying for us.
Oh, for us.
Yeah, and of course, like if you were an immortal being, yeah, through that reasoning, yes, you are correct.
No.
But for us, obviously, we are not immortal beings, but we seek immortality.
Sure.
So
Heidegger says wrongly so, though. And here's why he's particularly interesting as a philosopher.
I mean, we seek, even though we are never going to attain it.
Well, yes.
Okay.
And that's what Heidegger's Das Man is that it's this, like, everything is something that's been done before. Maybe not, like, the exact same way, but the notion, like, of it and behind it. And maybe not the particular way in which it's performed, but the general way in which things are performed has all been done before. There's nothing that's, like, particularly unique. And so we enter into this...
Including his philosophy.
Indeed.
Including all philosophy. I mean, all philosophy is just a footnote of Socrates.
Indeed.
Dude, have you read the Pre-Socratics?
I just know
They're all about, like, everything is made of water. No. Everything is made of fire. No. Everything is made of air. That's what Pre-Socratics are arguing about.
All right, back on track.
It's nothing all that interesting.
Go on. Choo-choo.
Hey.
What?
I have nothing to add to that.
Oh, all right. Well, and, I've been derailed.
Okay, well, let's play a song. And then we can wrap
Wait,
up our last
wait.
20 minutes or so.
Wait.
You're working on a thought?
Yes.
Gears are turning. Gears are turning.
Okay, we're back on track.
Okay.
We're back on track.
Okay.
All right.
He's still going strong, everybody.
So, for Heidegger,
I want to talk about suicide.
death is a deal. Give it a chance. I'm almost done.
We're gonna end with suicide.
All right, we're gonna end the show.
boy.
We're gonna end the show with suicide, everybody.
I'm so sorry.
Terrible head.
Sorry, Bill's mom.
She's not listening.
Probably taste like shit. It's getting low.
Yeah, I actually kind of did. Okay.
Okay. So then to wrap up this for Heidegger, yeah, the whole like Das Mann thing where you're trying to enter into like this coalescing society and avoid death does not work because the only way to achieve any meaning in life for Heidegger is to be constantly aware of death.
Is that coconut?
It's strawberry colada.
Ugh.
So we have to like live our lives in recognition that we're going to die, and that gives life meaning because there is again the sense of urgency, the sense of importance that because I'm going to die, I have the ability to accomplish things, whereas prior, otherwise I would not. So it doesn't matter that what I'm going to do may be undone and I may be forgotten because that doesn't affect me. I can only interact with the world through my subjective means of interacting through the world.
So in a certain sense, life is meaningless, but not really.
Yes.
Okay.
Because
I mean, that's
For
existentialism in a nutshell.
we have the ability to give meaning to things because we're going to die.
Okay.
And because that gives us the ability, subjectively speaking, to make things matter.
When was Heidegger around?
40s.
See,
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
was that?
Very
Yeah.
interesting.
That was the golden age of the existentialists.
I'm sorry. What?
40s.
Nin-
1940s.
1940s?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 1940s.
I thought he was like 1800s.
Yeah, I think
No, no.
Heidegger, I think.
I've never read Heidegger, so I mean, this is a new exposure to me. So what about suicide?
Camus.
What about it? Okay, we have talked about Camus and the myth of Sisyphus and suicide in the past, and just to quickly sum it up, when like the average person, when they come to this realization that the inevitability of death and the intrinsic meaninglessness of the world, that ultimately nothing really matters, and they are faced with this question of, well, if there is no point to living, should I just commit suicide? And Camus even stated that how did he word it? Like, the ultimate question of philosophy is suicide because it deals with determining whether or not life itself is worth living. And and that's, I would say that's definitely probably the biggest question to suicide, whether or not life itself is a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah.
And in a nutshell, he sums up that there are three reactions, three responses to this realization, what he calls realizing the absurdity of life. The first is suicide, which he rules out by saying, like, if there is no motivation to life, then there is also no motivation for suicide. Essentially, what's the point in killing yourself?
Yeah.
The second is the religious perspective. Like what Kierkegaard says, taking the leap of faith, which Camus says is philosophical suicide. It requires no reasoning to do so. And it's almost just saying, why this, why that? Because God. Philosophical suicide.
Mm-hmm. I really.
I know I'm not really doing this justice, but
So we're speaking of generally nihilism, feeling like there's absolutely
the
no value
overwhelming
for
feeling
anything
of
in life.
nihilism. You're saying, what is the point in anything? There are three. He's saying that there are three responses
I think
to
that
this.
true nihilism is an incoherent notion. First, because if you are a true nihilist, then you would not just say that there is no objective value. You would also have to concede that there is literally no value, no subjective value, and that is something that we just cannot. We cannot have no value in our lives. Otherwise, we like, okay, so either we like any activity we do, anything we do, whether it's inactivity or activity, we're motivated in some way to do that. Inaction is action, essentially, and
Right.
killing yourself is an action. So you
Yeah,
have to
it's
have
almost
some
saying like
motivation
I'm gonna
to do
stop.
that.
Like I'm gonna stop living. You know,
Yeah,
or like
yeah. You're
I'm
still
not go-
motivated by something
Yeah.
to act, and if you're motivated, that is essentially you see value in something, whether
Yeah.
it's real or subjective.
Yeah, you
and then
place more value on.
that gives you an
You
incentive
place
to
more
do it.
value on being not alive than
Yeah,
you do on
exactly.
being alive.
So you're
Right.
not really a nihilist. There's something wrong in your
Exactly.
reasoning, because to be a nihilist is to simply like not exist and never have existed. It just doesn't make any sense how you could be like a true nihilist while simultaneously living. That's just totally incoherent. And then to say, well, then that warrants suicide. Well, then obviously you see some value in that. So it's just like, are you really a nihilist, or are you just like really like depressed? Like,
So-
what is going on here?
So a true nihilist would say like, man, everything is pointless,
Yeah.
and boom, he stops existing.
Like
Like he decided like,
essentially, yeah.
there's no point in existing anymore, man. So he just stops existing. He just stops doing
Just
it.
literally like
Yeah,
ceases to exist,
Right.
which he could not do.
of course.
At least not in this world.
Yeah, but
So-
like his solution would be to, obviously commit suicide.
Yeah.
But there is a third option. What that Camus proposes, and it is to live in while constantly acknowledging the inherent meaninglessness
Mm-hmm.
and lack of value in life and in existence and in the universe, and be in constant revolt of that fact.
Yeah.
These
You still have
the-
that inner subjective value that you place on things.
In a
You
sense,
wanna
like
fight it.
constantly acknowledging that nothing has any inherent meaning, but revolting against that idea simultaneously. And he kind of sums up this notion like in the myth of Sisyphus, which I don't remember like all the details, but essentially Sisyphus, he was condemned in Hades to push a boulder up a hill for all of eternity, only to, after he reaches the top of the hill, have the boulder roll back down the other side, and then he has to climb back down to the bottom and push it back up again. A completely meaningless task. But he carries on doing it anyway. Essentially, like facing the meaningless task, but revolting against it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, he would have to be like sociopathic. He would have to have zero emotions, because when you have emotions, that means that you associate like certain sentiments to certain external like events and occurrences and like objects in the world. So like I see this pen, and I associate some sort of like productivity to this pen, because it reminds me that I write a lot of papers with this pen. So I'm attaching a sentiment to it, and like a function, and all those things are like just specific types of values, I think. So like the only way to like completely separate yourself like from like everything having like any sort of value whatsoever, you really just have to be like this, like a boulder, like a rock itself, because like evolution just doesn't, it hasn't allowed for us to develop that way, to like literally see no function, no purpose, no meaning in anything. Like we just innately find meaning even if it isn't there, even if there really is no meaning, because like what does that really mean? Like, sorry, what does it mean for like something to have meaning? Yeah, maybe like in the grand scheme of things, like it doesn't have like some sort of like intrinsic value, like some like mystical like aura of it, but
Yeah, like there's
we see value in it.
there's no agenda to life.
it's productive. Like there's something, we attach a sentiment to it, like this makes me happy if I'm thirsty, like that's a value.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I don't see how you could really have no value whatsoever. I mean,
Yeah, in a sense, like that's why the pushing the boulder up the hill
Yeah.
is a proper metaphor, because on the surface there is no inherent value to
But
it.
is he upset
But
about it? Is he like, this sucks? Does he have any like emotion about what he's doing? Because if he's like, this sucks, then he's applying value to that activity, right? I mean, it seems that way.
you look like you have something you want to say.
Yeah.
Like I've always wanted to have like a serious conversation about the myth of Sisyphus and really
I have to read.
really tear it apart more. I kind of want to reread it.
You would have a hard time doing that. It's pretty solid. There are some, of course, problems with it, but
Mhm.
there are.
Like I guess like when I did read it, like I read it over winter break, and I can honestly say like it did not click with me until like 4 days after I read it, and now I was just kind of like thinking about it, like, holy crap, I get it, that's genius. You
No,
know,
it's absolutely brilliant. Campbell
it
is a
it, it, it
fantastic
is.
philosopher.
After you like kind of, you know, put it all together and like, I don't know. It is brilliant. Just like I'm not doing it justice at all by
Well, let's look
attempting
at
to
it
explain it.
this way. There's a couple things I want to note here. So firstly, your suggestion that nihilism doesn't make sense because there is like meaning in the universe, but meaning that we
Well, no, he's saying that like
value.
if there is no
Value, if you
objective
will.
meaning that
Impossible for us to not value things. Is what I'm proposing.
well, here's the problem.
you could
is when you say
you
that.
could at least place value like if you're hungry, you don't want to be hungry. You're placing value on the state of being not hungry.
Well, that's not real. That's not real nihilism. That's nihilism that's been
That's
extrapolated from its definition.
right. That yeah.
True nihilism is not that. True nihilism is the suggestion
So you,
that there is no meaning within the universe.
Independent of us.
There's no meaning. Like,
well,
one, independent of you.
meaning or value. Like it's a package deal.
Meaning
Yeah,
opposites
you can
of
use the
all
two
things.
Well, meaning and value are two different things, but in regards to nihilism, yeah, I would say they are.
for the purpose of this conversation. And I would disagree with you. I mean, anyone else would because there is nuances between the two. But for the purpose of this conversation,
And
let's use them interchangeably.
also, I would like to say just to clarify when I say value, I mean inherent value, not like of course when we're talking about like if you put a limit on anything, we are able to place value on. Like say in life, if we had an infinite amount of time in life, we wouldn't place any value on life. We can only place value on things that are finite. But when I say value, I'm talking about inherent value. Inherent
Independent
worth.
of us. Like,
Independent of
this
us, yes.
pen has its own value within itself.
Yeah.
And
And in a sense, that would be to say
that would be
that
like
pen has
sort of
meaning.
nihilism, though. That wouldn't be like absolute nihilism to say that like there's no value whatsoever for anyone. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
You gotta talk to the mic when you talk, 'cause otherwise it's just dead air.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry about that. I think it's because like you are like.
It's just.
I think he feels awkward leaning over top of you.
I feel like
Well,
my
just
breath
yeah,
is-
just
'Cause-
grab it.
You just.
Just grab it. So, well, yeah, I'm not going to claim that. Yeah, the way that nihilism is being used here is improper. The term nihilism specifically denotes the suggestion that there is no, firstly, inherent meaning in the universe. So outside of my existence, outside of my consciousness, there is no meaning. But then it further goes on to say,
absurd to say an existentialist would be in agreement with you there.
of course,
We're on board so far.
of course.
What's the
And then the nihilist would further go and say, because there is no external meaning in the universe, the only other explanation, like the existentialist would say, is that I create meaning and value in some sense. And the nihilist will go, well, that's just silly. Because how do you create value? What is that? What does that entail? What goes on when you create value? How are you supposed to explain that?
Right.
So because I have some like genetic predisposition to require limited thing or to require certain things, I've placed the value on that. And then I also say that doesn't make any sense. You can't pull value out of thin air because it's effectively what you're doing.
Right.
So
And if that were the case, you could say that if you were a nihilist, you could acknowledge the fact that everything is inherently meaningless. You could also then say like, well, if it is up to me to place value on things, say I choose not to place value on anything. That means like if right, like yeah, you were saying that you can't choose to not place value on things. But say if I was a nihilist and say like if value and meaning is subjective to myself, then if I still say that everything is meaningless, then that holds true.
well, the nihilist goes for Tyler's making the claim that you cannot, assuming
I was
that.
making the claim that like you cannot not put value on anything.
Well, here's the deal. The nihilist goes further and says, yes, you can, because what you're putting on things is not like actual value. It's like this placeholder. It's imaginary. It's a currency, if you will. But there's no real meaning to it. It's just this arbitrary action. The same way that like that protozoa don't like value their existence.
Right.
They just do things.
Or say like take like the diamond water paradox that we talked about last month.
Yeah, and that seems to suggest, furthermore, that this is all very arbitrary.
Very
terms of
much,
like
yes.
how we are like valuing things. So to an extent, the nihilist carries quite a bit of weight with him in that claim that things don't have value per se.
So the nihilist would like define value as something that we like consciously like rationally, reasonably apply to something. So like, but what I was saying is that like innately, if we see any function in an object, that would be like value, that we have placed a value on that object.
No.
So he is defining value differently to mean something more like that only humans can really apply value to things, and that because there is no value, we shouldn't apply value to things, like because he knows that we can, obviously, but like the nihilist knows we have the ability to like to place value on like our daughter.
They would say that like if you do make that claim that it would be illusory, it would be a false claim to make. And to kind of in response to what you said there, I mentioned the water diamond paradox, and if we say that like we place value on things based on like their usefulness, or like like we place value on things of like how it can benefit us in some way. Well, in the case of the water diamond paradox, water is something that we can only go a few days without. Like we can only live for a few days without water before we die, but it is extremely abundant, and in assuming like in every developed country in the world, it's very accessible, and it's usually free. Like I can go to a water fountain and get a drink of water for free. I can get a life-saving substance for free. But in the case of diamonds, which have little to no practical value, like most often is being used like in jewelry, which has no real practical use, and in special cases it's used like in like cutting equipment, things like that. And those are usually synthetic diamonds. Well, yes, but the idea is the same. Like when we are talking about economics, I mean, economics is essentially the philosophy of money, and it still deals with value. That's pretty much like economics, essentially the philosophy of value.
That diamond, like, gives it value.
Well, scarcity.
Scarcity, yeah, exactly. But
Scarcity, and it's all perceived value. But I mean, a diamond like doesn't affect your life at all. But we place a much higher value.
Value is not limited to like it being like beneficial or like detrimental to your existence.
Right.
But that is like one type of way to value something.
But that's what I'm saying. That's why it's paradoxical.
Why is a $10 bill
like
worth anything? Like,
yeah, it's just a piece of paper.
Like it's nothing.
But it's representative
But it's
of value.
scarce.
But
You can use it for things, so it has utility.
yeah, talking about more, dude.
Like,
But do you see where the problem arises?
I do
here?
see
It's
that.
that like we can
It
place
seems
value
paradoxical.
we place value on useless things more than we do
But
life-saving
it
things.
seems like it's not really useless though. A diamond, like because it is scarce and because it's like sociologically recognized as being valuable, so there's this consensus of it being valuable. So it's now like if you are put into that society, you adopt that notion of it being valuable, like just mechanically.
Right, but I
everybody
mean, it's
does.
really like ultimately like a false notion.
In itself, it has no like inherent value, but there is that subjective like consensual value that we apply to it in a society, and we can use that diamond to buy things that are useful for us.
Right.
Just as a piece of like a $10 bill, it doesn't have any inherent value.
It's representative of value, but it is not.
In itself,
it's not
it has no
inherently
value.
value in any
Yeah.
sense. I mean, we could make the argument that water has inherent
You would say
value
it has inherent value
because it is necessary for us to
but it
survive.
seems
We
still
could make
that's
that
contingent
argument.
on us. Like it's only valuable like because we exist and like desire to use it. But like inherently, the water is just H2O with oxygen, nitrogen.
Yeah, outside of us or even outside of living things that has no value. Of course, it's just a
Yeah.
right.
Okay, just for a moment, I'm going to point out that prior you determine side of the term value was going to be used as intrinsic value, which is to say that any time that there is value, it is within the object. It is a property of that object.
I mean,
independent of
we're
us.
already in agreement there that like
Well, you can't say that
outside of
then.
us, like
Well, then we have to change our terms if we're going to speak about something as having value that is determined by society. It would no longer be intrinsic.
well, you're right. And what I was kind of doing there was arguing against our definition of value. Like, do we call things valuable because they are practical, because they are useful, or because they can directly affect our lives in some way, or is it because they some things are not valuable in that sense, but they are representative of value? Like we have a $10 bill. The $10 bill itself can't really do anything. We place $10 of value, air quotes, value on it, but that $10 itself is useless. But we can use that $10 to buy $10 worth of food, which is, in a sense, just as valuable as the $10, but in, you know, in all practical purposes, is more valuable because we can eat $10 worth of food. We can't eat a $10 bill.
Again, this is a discussion of
That's what I'm saying.
economics.
Yes.
It's no
And-
longer a discussion of existentialism.
You are correct. We did go off on a tangent there, and
This is the beauty of philosophy.
right, but the point that I am bringing up is that, I mean, we can still like take this analogy and apply it to everything in general. That if we say that a $10 is not valuable but is representative of value, can we say that everything that we call valuable, is nothing more than just representative of value?
Yeah. And then what the hell is
But then if we say that, then we're saying that like value is something that exists but is somehow transcendent, or
values within here, and those objects represent that.
it all derives from the soul, man.
Well, yeah, that doesn't make
Which is-
any sense. 'Cause
Which may or may not be
I would
conscious.
say it makes at least a little sense.
I would have to disagree.
But it makes no sense.
You
I would say it
disagree
makes
with me on
no sense.
everything today.
So let's think about this. So humans then have the ability to interact with things and create value. Is that what's being suggested?
We're saying that we label things as being valuable, and those objects are representative
Of
something that we believe exists.
well, now value exists
Yeah.
because what are we? We are physical things.
We accept that illusion. You do. Everyone does.
I mean, value is obviously like it's an idea. In the same way that like a memory of something doesn't
But
exist.
ideas are things that are physical. Ideas are physical.
I would say no.
Arguably.
Absolutely.
I would say no.
Then how are they? What are they then if they're not physical?
If we're dualists, we could just say it's
Can you-
this immaterial thing.
Well, I could still argue that like it is like an immaterial thing. Like say,
Then what is it?
well, I mean, like take any idea. Take the idea of identity,
Yes.
memory, the idea of a country rather than just being a plot of land. It exists as an idea.
Well, I think we have to go, but I think that is an excellent topic for the upcoming blog post.
Right,
that we can
and
do.
I think that actually leads well into the discussion that I, want to have for next week on pragmatism.
That sounds excellent.
All right.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. This is Caleb.
This is Tyler. Thanks again, Bill and Caleb, for having me on.
Yeah, no problem.
And this is Bill. And
We're-
we're closing. What are we closing out with? Mumford.
Wait, Mumford.
There you go.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good night.
Have a good night.
Just turn off.
It's 2:00.